Alright guys, so I wanted to make another video that goes over how to add features faster, and not just faster, but how to add features that provide the most amount of value to the user, and how to do it with the least amount of headache. So this is how to ship features faster, and let me just go over a general framework, and then I will also have a example that I will be going over that we can use as kind of example while going over this entire video. So let's say that we want to add a new agent feature that lets us scan the person's account. So this is just some general AI agent feature that we want to add to our product, and it is something that the users have been asking for. So let me just go over the general framework for adding new stuff to products. And the first thing that I want to just highlight is that not all features that we add are actually value add to the user. So what that means is that the biggest problem that a product can have is that it adds too much features that the users don't use, and then it bloats the entire user experience because there are so many different features that are not used, and then it's very confusing for the user to figure out what is actually value to the user, right? So that's a key thing, which is first we want to figure out like step from the user's perspective. So the user has a goal that they want to achieve, and all of our features, all of our entire product's existence is to help the user achieve their goal, right? So the entire existence of this product isn't to make money, it isn't to show off our tech, it isn't to add as much features as we want. The pure reason that this product exists is because it is helping a user solve a problem. So that's a key mindset to have, because a lot of times a lot of these um choices about what we should add, how we should add it, if we should add something, if we boil it down to just understanding what the user is having problem with and what our product is helping them solve, then a lot of that has clarity. So this step probably is the key thing, and it is worth spending at least 5 to 10 minutes or even up to an hour a day to figure out what problem are we solving with this product, and that will solve a lot of confusion and anxiety about what we should add. So that's the first thing, which is what the user is trying to solve. So let's say in this app we are having a Reddit tracker and we are trying to add this AI agent, right? So one of the biggest problems is maybe the user is confused and they rather just prefer a chat-based thing, and this feature will fix it. So assuming that this feature will actually help them solve their problem, then let's start implementing this feature. So the first thing is we want to start off with the API and database. So one of the biggest problems that I've had, especially when building products, is that I start off with the front end, and sometimes the database or API structure doesn't allow me to create the front end experience that we like. So what I've kind of learned over the years is that if you start off with the database is the core thing that holds everything together, because the API will allow the user to read and write to the database, and then the front end will show what the database has, right? So that's the general structure. So the core thing that we want to really get right is the database and how it is structured, and how we want to add features, how we want to change the database over time. So this goes back to what I mentioned in the beginning of the video, which is we want to figure out what problem we're solving, because when we design the database, we want to make sure that even years from now, this database can support the user in the problems that they may have. So before we even design the database, we want to make sure that we understand the problem, and then we have a database that can solve their problems now, and then in years from now, it can still solve any problems that they might have, and any new features that we might add. So that's a key thing, which is first start off with the database and make sure that it is flexible enough, but it is also as simple as possible so that there isn't bloat in the database. So that's a key thing, and this is worth spending a lot of time making sure that the database and API structure are very clean and very simple, so that it's easy to maintain in the future in any new features that we add. And then the next thing is to figure out like what is the current structure of the code base, right? So in most cases, it is better to just follow the existing pattern or existing structure of the database, because if we have too many structures within the code base, then it is actually a lot harder and there are more chances to adding bugs. So it is better to just like figure out what the current structure of the code base is and then add on top of that while keeping the patterns and nuances and structure of that code base the same as we add new features. So going back to our example of adding a new AI agent feature, what I would do is I would first make sure, like, just check out what the database has and how it's structured, and then I would design the API structure, and then I would just have a mock front end. So what I mean by mock front end is that it is useful to sometimes just design the front end in either Figma Make, in Lovable, and one of these AI landing page generators, and just tell it to make out the front end so that you can just like test out a lot of different styles and designs. If that's too complex, then you can also just maybe just spin up a mock front end with Claude Code, and then just figure out, like, just tweak it based off of the design and not actually connect it to the backend yet. So just make the front end, see if it looks good, and then check with all your stakeholders, so other clients that you might have or other teammates, confirm the front end is good, and then connect it to the backend and the database. And then I'm not sure what ship vertical slices mean, but yeah, like this is like a really amazing tip, which is just to make sure that the front end is done. So you can make the front end, and then you can just have a backend that returns mock data, right? So in the mock data, you can just have a API that returns hard-coded data, so that you can have that data show on the front end, so that you don't have to make the entire thing and then find out that you need to have the database in a certain way. So if you send mock data, you will figure out all of the kinks and all the issues that are really hard to come up with just when you're just like writing a document or just designing it on Figma. It's a lot easier to figure out the issues, especially when you have it in code and you can play around with it. And then this is like pre-launch, right? So let's say we do all this and we finally code it up. When we are rolling it out, we want to make sure that we limit the impact if there are issues. So the first thing is, when we ship something, we want to just limit the impact. So think, will this new change cause our current production flow to be impacted? And in most cases, the answer should be no. When we roll out new changes, it should only be in new flows that don't impact previous flows, which means that if we roll this out, there are very little chance that it impacts our current flow. And if there are chances that it impacts our current flow, then we need to make sure that there are not only logs, but also there are metrics to see that the new change was not only successful, but also that there was no negative impact on our previous flow. So that's the key thing, which is adding a lot of logs that are relevant. So not just spammy logs, but like logs that have relevant specialized data that can easily be debugged, and then have metrics to track all of it. Commits are not that useful because Claude Code can write a lot of the commits now, or the PR titles and descriptions. But yeah, this is the last tip, was just to make sure that the scope that we added is very little. So in most cases, we want to create this like crazy, like 300 IQ feature that will impress all of our users, but it is much better. Okay, so in my experience, I've worked on products where we added these really complicated systems that on paper sound really complex, right? And The problem is no one uses them. So that's the main thing. So even if you have the best code and you have the best feature, best design, if no one uses it, then who cares if you ship that out? So what I found to be best is that if you have a feature that cannot be finished in one day, it is much better to just ship something out and to slim the scope. So there are several things that you can cut. So you can either cut the quality of the code, you can either cut the scope of the code, right? And in most cases, it's much better to just cut the scope of the code, because if we cut the quality, there are more bugs and people will churn. So it's better to just decrease the scope so that we have something that's much simpler that we can ship out faster, that the user can give feedback on. And like a general feedback is that, like, if it can't be shipped within 1 to 2 days, then it is way too complex and it should be much simpler. Like, even if we just ship out a like front end that has mock data that allows the user to play around with it and then show some interest, that is much better than working on something for months and months that the user cannot play with. So that's the main thing, which is that just check the features that we're adding, ship out something that is workable, make sure that it has value, and we understand what problem that we're solving for the user. And if they don't show any positive response to the new feature that we added, then we need to decide, like, was it actually valuable or should we just cut it, right? So it's much better to have a smaller app that solves your problem with less bloat, less features, so that there's less bugs, which is higher quality for the user, so that they stick around. So yeah, these are our tips, and hopefully some of these are useful.